Hello, everybody, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Today, we are finally getting around to recording the Player's Guide. I've talked about it, referenced it off and on throughout various other videos, but I'm finally sitting down to get this going. And when it comes to putting together characters, really the number one thing you should be doing, regardless of setting, regardless of game, is to talk to your DM and storyteller. Now, ideally, they would have already started talking to you and the rest of the group to figure out what kind of setting or game sounds like the most fun. But if they haven't, you know that there's a game coming up, you really want to talk to them and get figured out what you're playing and what the setting is, because it's fantasy. It's a fictional setting and universe. The number of options are literally limitless and infinite. The different ways that things can be combined, mixed, and matched, it's just, you really want to try to find out ahead of time what's going on, so that way you can really start thinking about what type of character you want to play. And when I say what type of character, I mean a couple of different things. Really, you want to think about, mechanically, what kind of character you want to play. What kind of a role do you want to fill? Are you wanting to be this brave, heroic fighter, this noble paladin, this savagely brutal barbarian? Or do you want to be this brilliant spellcaster that summons up hellfire and demons and monsters raining comets down out of the sky? Or are you going to be this beguiling enchanter and illusionist that is able to warp and twist their enemies' minds under their control with just a matter of will and a small expenditure of power? Or are you going to be this cybernetically augmented pirate out on the fringes of space, just swooping in on the boarding vessels, hopping aboard these various merchant ships or ships of the line, slaughtering and fighting your way through the decks to just grab hold of that valuable loot that's just buried deep on board and guarded by all sorts of horrible sci-fi, terrifying monstrosities and firepower that's just between you and your ill-gotten gains? Really, the options are just so much and so limitless, and really, like I said, building your character really depends on the type of game that you're playing and the setting that's involved, because building a warrior in Pathfinder is going to be very different from building a warrior in Warhammer 40k, whether it's Dark Heresy or the Imperial Guard version or Rogue Trader. Even within those three separate examples from the Warhammer 40k universe, the how you put together the character, well, mechanically, how you put together the character will be similar, but because the settings are so vastly different from Dark Heresy, the Imperial Guard, and Rogue Traders, there's going to be some different things that end up happening with your character, and that's more story and background wise, but those things are as important as the mechanical hows and whys that you put your character together. Some people may say that that's the mechanics are more important. Some people may say the story's more important, and neither's necessarily wrong. For myself, I place an equal emphasis and value on both the mechanics and the story, because I like having mechanically effective characters. It keeps them alive longer, especially if I'm in one of my moods where I want to be a little bit extra punishing and terrifying for the players. But the story is also important too, because I've played in games where it's just been a straight numbers game, and that can be interesting and fun. But for me, I like it so much better when the characters are characters, the players are getting into it, the players are getting into and engaging with the story and are having fun. And I appreciate that massively as a player as well on those oddball occasions where I'm actually the one that gets to play. I love having a really good, really juicy story that I can just sink my teeth into. And I love getting into these. Well, I play so many different kinds of characters now. Human warriors are always going to be my favorite. Yes, I love the vanilla. I just love the plain old stuff. I actually love regular old vanilla ice cream, but it's because you can do so much stuff with it. And really, that's what you want to think about when you're putting together these characters. Now, aside from figuring out setting, the number one thing you want to think of is, what do you want to play? Once you know the setting, once you know the game that you're playing in, what do you want to play as? Do you want to be that noble paladin? Do you want to be that cyber augmented pirate? If you're playing Shadowrun, are you going to be a decker, a rigger, a street samurai, a street shaman, a mage, whatever sort of different character types, character archetype that you want to put together? It's going to start off with that very most baseline of ideas, and it's just that, well, it's just that character archetype that you're thinking of. Do you want to be that melee specialist damage dealing tank? Are you going to be a ranged combat person? Really, it all starts with that, and then taking a look at the mechanics of the game, the class options available, or the how you can distribute your skill points if you're playing in a game that relies on skill points rather than character levels, and putting that to looking at how you can put together what you want to build. Now, again, that's just looking at it from a straight mechanical perspective, but you also want to start thinking about why your character is the way they is, where they've come from, what's led them up to this point in their life. Any good bit of storytelling is, the best advice you can ever get for storytelling is thinking about your character like this. Is this the most exciting point in my character's life? If not, why aren't we focusing on that story? So we have hit a point of the most interesting part of the character's life, but that doesn't mean the rest of the backstory, how they got to there, can't be interesting. You can certainly play a character that's come from a very boring, mundane background, but how they got to the point of being an adventurer is very interesting in and of itself. And if they're brand new to adventuring entirely, like say we're starting off fresh, brand new level 1 characters, again, depending on setting and game, this may be a little bit harder to explain than others, but figuring out who your character is and where they've come from, and their personality helps to go a long way towards making your character more of a character. For example, my wife, brand new to tabletop gaming. She's played off and on a little bit, but very rarely for more than a session or two. Not a lot of time to really get into her character, especially being brand new. Had no idea really what to do. Granted, I would give her advice and help and suggest things for her, try to help her along without being that getting into that trope of, oh, it's the DM's girlfriend, it's the DM's wife, she gets to have all the power. I try to keep it fair, but I would have instances where I'd try to make a suggestion to help her out, more just how to play, or advise her on the number of options that she really had available that would make sense. Not that characters always have to make sense, but that's a whole nother thing for another time. But it's only really been recently, playing off and on in Shadowrun, that she's really kind of started to figure out this character she's made. And Shadowrun is standard human, metahuman. Has one cybernetic arm augmentation. Ended up pumping a decent amount of new yen into that in order to make it a really powerful arm. But she's a bounty hunter, and she's built entirely around being a sniper. I did help her with the build and helped her specialize her character a little bit more, and we ended up taking some various traits for her character, one of which was her character was an alcoholic. Now, she had forgotten about this a little bit, but over the course of gameplay, the last 2 or 3 sessions that we've gotten to play, this character has been really quirky, really mouthy, and annoyingly, aggravatingly flirtatious with Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, for those of you who may not have played Shadowrun or know much about it, Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, they are figures that live well, essentially in the shadows in service of larger forces like the mega corporations that essentially dominate and control most of the Earth, or most of the Earth's resources. They're the ones that exist between the margins that get all the dirty work done. They're the ones that go out and find people to get the dirty work done, and they dispense the pay from there. Shadowrunners are the characters that take those jobs and run these different jobs against rival mega corporations, getting paid for their time, looking out for any extra pay data that they can get their hands on. It's a whole big thing, but it's a lot of fun. So, this is a character that this is an NPC that is authorized by some pretty heavy hitters to get some extra legal work done. And my wife's character has been annoyingly flirtatious and irritating, but in a good way, in a way that's been fun and engaging story-wise. And the only reason Mr. Johnson puts up with it is because, well, it's hard to find good help these days, and she is a hell of a good shot and has made her bullets count very effectively in the line of work that he's had her on. So, but, when she remembered and realized, looking over her character sheet, she's like, oh, crap, I've got a mild alcohol addiction. This explains a lot about my character. Yeah, kinda. I thought you were playing it full tilt there. I thought you were doing a pretty good job, but turns out she'd just kind of forgotten about it. But the part that made me happy as a DM or storyteller, and also a bit as a player too, was when she realized something about her character, about her character's personality, and realize it, just that moment of clarity, just you could see how it crystallized in her mind's eye as she was just like, oh wow, and just really ended up embracing that part of her character. And actually, she said to me, I'm kind of starting to figure this out. This is fun. It's like nothing could make me happier. And it's great seeing a new player actually have a lot of fun doing this very thing, doing this thing that we love. And that's the thing of it right there, is just that little bit right there. It explains a lot about her character and it informs a lot of her decisions. And now she makes more of a point to mention, her character's taking a drink here, taking a drink there. The rating for the addiction is mild, so she's just got to either maintain a steady stream of drinks. She doesn't have to get blackout drunk, but or at least a couple of times a week get herself really, really trashed. But again, that's just one little thing about her character, and the rest of it's just kind of unfolding from there. And sometimes that's all it really takes, is figuring out just a couple of details about your character. And for this here, that's what I really recommend for you to do when you're putting together a character. You've got the archetype figured out, and you know what you want to play. You're going to be playing a fighter in a high fantasy setting, in, like, say, Pathfinder, and you know where the character's from, you know a little bit about them, at least a little bit of the backstory. But ideally, and this is my recommendation for you, is to think of 4 things about your character. 3 positive things, 1 negative thing. And just having 3 positive traits and 1 negative can do a lot to really open up about your character and help to form their personality. I recommended this very thing for my brother on a trip out to Washington a few months ago, when we had sat down with some cousins of mine to play, and I was running the game, and I had them think about this, and my brother made a neutral evil halfling rogue for this steampunk fantasy setting that I was running. And he actually ended up coming up with negative after negative after negative for his halfling, because he felt like the positive qualities were reflected in his skills, because he really topped out his stealth skill and his thieving abilities, and really damn good job putting this character together. But he made him just a little bit of a narcissist. Made him really terrible with money. Like, he just doesn't care about money, because the reason for it is he's never had a problem coming across more money, because he's that good of a thief, especially starting out at level 1. Yeah, we started off at like level 1, maybe level 2. Point being, really, really incredibly skilled thief, especially for the level. But the negative trait came about as a result of that one positive. He just is awful with money, just spends it and flings it everywhere. And, well, he started off the adventure literally doing just that, stole from a merchant, climbed on top of a cart, and then made it hail, throwing the coin purse up in the air, yelling, "Gold Rush!" And just started a small riot as money, silver, and gold coins started raining down out of the sky. But, and the other traits kind of just kept stacking up. It's just his neutral evil, but he definitely was an agent of chaos. Only in the sense that agent of chaos in the sense that it was entertaining for him. He would spread these little traps, cause little fights, and when I say little traps, I mean like he'd take a bag of marbles and spill them on the ground and wait and watch for somebody to walk by, not paying attention, and slip and fall, all just to amuse himself, or getting poor Farmer Egger into a fight with the half-orc barbarian. Oh no, not a barbarian, half-orc fighter that my cousin was running, and just watching him get completely trounced. It was hilarious watching them all play off of each other. They all ended up being sort of terrible people for this particular adventure. But, point being, my brother, who had not played in several years, just with off of this advice that I gave him, asking them for a couple of positive traits and at least one negative, ended up coming up with trait after trait after trait and started figuring out more of this little halfling's personality. And it really informed the gameplay, and it came off great, and the role-playing was just, it was excellent. I cannot recommend doing this enough. As a new player, or even for you DMs and storytellers out there, ask your players, come up with a couple of traits, a couple of positives, and at least one negative trait. It'll do a lot, especially if they're really getting into it. It'll do a lot to inform their role-playing and their gameplay. Anyways, that's just the start for getting your character figured out. As we go along through this series, I'll be taking a look at various character builds and character classes. Starting off, we're going to be focusing mostly on the realm of the D20 systems, Pathfinder, D20 Modern, and Dungeons & Dragons. But I do hope to branch out and take a look at builds for other games and other systems. I'm probably going to be, for the most part, avoiding games like Rolemaster. Rolemaster, if you've never played it before or haven't heard of it, it's a game from the 80s. It's been a lot of fun to play, but holy crap. It took about, granted we did this the hard way, there's spreadsheets out there that will help you auto-calculate and build and put together your character, and cuts down on a lot of the time, but because I was new to it and my friend who had brought the game to my attention was new-ish at running the game. He'd run it before, but he had been building characters using these various spreadsheets. I wanted to build it the hard way, the by hand way, picking and choosing things and filling things in with by pencil, because that was entirely new for both of us. It took us a solid 4.5 hours to put together one character. It's a lot. So, suffice it to say, Rolemaster, even though I'm faster and better at putting characters together, I'm going to leave that one alone. We're going to be focusing on things that are a little bit faster, like Shadowrun, the Dark Heresy games, Dungeons and Dragons, anything like that. That's going to go relatively quick, and it's going to be like a solid 20 minutes maybe. But with that said, I'm happy to get this new series started. Next episode, we are going to be taking a look at building fighters. We're going to look at what you would call an optimized build and then an interesting build. I consider optimization to be different from being just a total munchkin and stacking stats with templates and carefully curated feat selections. There's a difference between building an effective character and something that's just so broken because you took advantage of so many different things and your DM didn't know when to tell you no. So yeah, we'll be looking at optimal builds and some interesting build ideas and options. With that said, I have been Jordan, your host, master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. If you've enjoyed the start of this new series, please let me know in the comments section below. Be happy to hear your feedback, and if you've been enjoying this so far, maybe consider giving us a like or even a subscription. And if you do subscribe, please, please, please hit that bell icon there so that way you get notified the next time I upload more content here down at the Gamer's Den. Once again, thank you all for your time. Have yourselves a good night.